start here. So first of all, welcome to the Air Force Ventures SBIR and STTR Open Topic AMA Ask Me Anything session. These webinars are intended to give you details and procedural updates on the program, right? And give you insight into our program offerings and the details associated with these. We'll talk through the SBIR and STTR offerings for this round, this 21.1 or 21.A cycle, and we will make sure to answer your questions as we go through. Before we get too far along, I want to make sure we'll go over some basic rules of engagement. First of all, this call is recorded, so if parts of your team are not able to attend today, or if you would like to reference some of the details and resources that we talk about today, you certainly can. We'll post these to the AFWERX website and the Air Force Ventures website to make those available to you. These SBIR and STTR, these small business programs are all unclassified. So please, at no time should you provide any classified information or should classified information be presented through these programs. Certainly, we will not provide any proprietary information in these AMAs, but you may put what you think is necessary in the proposal themselves. Please do post questions as we go through. We will be monitoring the YouTube chat and the Zoom questions for those who have access to Zoom, and we'll answer as many of those as we possibly can as we go through the presentation today. And for the AFWERX folks on the line, we can promote you to panelists if you're out there. So just simply raise your hand, and we'll get to those. For the program officers here on the call, my name is Jared Evans. I'm the STTR program manager for the Open Topic. I am joined by Zoe Walters, who is the SBIR Phase 1 program manager, and the Director Phase 2 program manager, Jimmy Colerain. We'll be walking through our individual slide sets here to kind of talk through our individual offerings. But as we go through, please do keep in mind that we have a variety of other resources available on the AFWERX website. You can go to the for industry and then navigate to the SBIR Open Topics and the STTR Open Topics there in the sub menu. All right, so why do we do this, right? Why are we here in the first place? Long story short is that there's, like you can see in the slide, there's thousands and thousands of companies who haven't realized that the Air Force can be a great partner, right? They haven't come to us and seen that the resources that we provide and understand some of the value propositions that we're bringing to the relationship, right? From the Air Force perspective, it's important for us to engage and nurture and cultivate our defense industrial base, right? Our defense industrial base, our academic resources, our industrial base writ large, right, are all national assets that we need to take advantage of in order to be effective in our national security mission set. In order to attract the folks who can work the best and provide the most value to our defense market, right? We need to make it work for you, right? It's one of those kind of help you, help us kind of situations where we want to make this program valuable for you. And in order to do that, we bring a variety of tools to these programs, right? Process updates, our value proposition during the program itself are all small business focused, right? We're here to provide value to you, the small business, as part of these programs. And we want to make sure that you're able to work as effectively as possible with the Air Force, right? So that ultimately you're able to provide the most value for our defense marketplace. All right, so what we're here about is transition, right? That's the reason that we're providing value to you. That's the reason that we're providing value to our defense customers, right? Is that ultimately we want to be able to put the most effective tools in the hands of our Air Force and Space Force colleagues all over the world. And this the way that we go about that through this open topic is much different than we have historically through these SBIR and STTR programs, specifically in the Air Force, right? For those who aren't as familiar with these small business programs, SBIR and STTR are programs that are administered by the Small Business Administration. The DoD, the Department of Defense, and the Air Force are just one player and one agency that are participate in these programs. And by so what you're going to see is that these AFWERX topics are specific to the Air Force process, and we are turning this process on its head, right? In terms of the way this has been done historically. Frankly, historically how this works is that the Air Force or the participating agency would go out with topics, and we would have to ask for certain things that we think that we need, right? That process can include a variety of errors based in us not knowing what is available to and not communicating those requests effectively. So what we have done with this open topic is that we have removed us from that initial piece of the equation, right? So any technology, any qualifying small business can come to us through this open topic platform and find ways, identify and codify their demand signal inside of the Defense Department, inside of the Department of the Air Force, and then work with those customers, those early adopters, generate prototypes, and grow and scale their technology with our non-dilutive funding throughout the course of the program. And ultimately, through all of the offerings that we'll talk through, you as the small business receive a sole source justification for the scope of your work for any federal agency. So that is to say, when you receive these SBIR and STTR contracts, you're able to then sell that directly to any federal agencies across the U.S. government. And that may not sound like a lot, right? From the outside looking in, you think that would be available already. That's a huge value proposition for the Air Force folks, for the federal government folks. One of the things that it doesn't always get communicated very well is that it can be very difficult for government entities, whether that be your fighter squadron or whether it be somebody in the rest of the federal government, to procure things for their mission set. And the way that this provides value is that instead of having to go through 6 months, a year plus of paperwork to generate requirements, do market research, compete contracts, they can come directly to you and they can procure and develop your technologies with you directly. So that cuts out a ton of time and effort needed from the government personnel to work with you directly later on. All right, so there's a variety of new things happening in the program, right? We are always trying to find ways to provide value, again, to the small businesses, to our government customers, and to make this program more effective for you all, right? The first thing, right, new partners and new opportunities. As you heard from a variety of speakers, whether it be Colonel Diller, Dr. Roper, or others last week in the AFWERX Accelerate program, you'll notice that we talked about SpaceWorks, talked about the potential of Space Prime, the new digital works that's coming up in Ohio, our Spark Cell network, it continues to grow, and we also have new mission area programs that we can talk through. All of these are designed to consolidate interest on the government side of the world, right, and make it easier for us as an Air Force to work with you as industry, right? We want to make this experience very valuable, right, in a variety of ways, and it's we do that not only by working on the program and working with you directly, but it's also with kind of greasing the skids, as it will, if you will, and making sure that our government partners are postured and empowered to work with you as well. Obviously, we're updating our curriculum and trying to find ways to make this engagement more seamless. We're working with and updating our evaluation process to include all of the department, to include Space Force, to include our operational S&T workforce as well. This will be largely transparent to you as the industrial base, but it's something that is important on the government side to empower our entire force to take advantage of this program. And then finally, certainly there's a lot of things going on in the world at the moment, but as we hopefully emerge from the pandemic state that we've been in for so long now, we start looking at the potential for in-person colliders and other events, similar to what you saw prior to all the recent pandemic type of activities. So we'll begin to look at that here in the coming months, and more to follow on those. All right. So when a lot of people think of Air Force Ventures, they think of SBIR or Sttr, right? And they kind of think it's one consolidated thing, right? And that is true in terms of process, right? These offerings follow the same process, follow the same timelines, but it is important to note that there are 3 separate offerings every cycle. So there is an Sttr phase 1, the small business technology transfer, and there's also SBIR phase 1 and direct to phase 2s. You can see the awards are very similar, right? For the phase 1s, the direct to phase 2s obviously skip to that phase 2 tier, if you will. And based on the funding streams, we're limited in the number of awards that we're able to do. These are very competitive contracts to receive. So, we do have to go through a very process every year, and make sure that these evaluations are done correctly. All right, so first of all, I'll cover the Sttr and finally hand it over to Zoe and to Jimmy as we move through here. Thank you. All right, so Sttr specifically. Sttr is a 3-phase development program that we talked about that is specifically tailored to commercialize this dual-use research, right? There's caveats in here that we'll talk through in just a moment that makes it different, that kind of highlights the difference between Sttr and SBIR. But ultimately, we want to engage the university community, the research community, the nonprofit community, and allow them to bridge between kind of where they are in that lab and research space and pull that compelling IP, elicit that compelling IP into the commercial space through this program. We want to help leverage our non-dilutive DoD funding to buy down some of that technology risk, and ultimately foster commercial success for you and your company. One of the things that we do want to highlight is that the Air Force iteration of the Sttr program are not research grants, as you see with NSF programs and with some others. These are in government contracts. Okay. So similar to SBIR, again, the process is very much the same. The sole source justification is all the same, just as you would see with the larger SBIR program. But there are some unique qualities based on the Sttr program guidance. First of all, there is a requirement for a research partner to perform between 30 and 60% of the work. So that includes all the work that's going to be done for each phase, right? And the other thing I wanted to highlight here is that we're talking about one qualifying research partner has to meet that requirement. You can have more, but one of the research partners does have to meet this requirement. One of the things that we'd like to highlight as well is that these research institution is not necessarily just a university. It can be a nonprofit, it can be an FFRDC, a federally funded research and development center, or a variety of other things. So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit as well. The principal investigator may be primarily employed by the research entity or the small business, which is important to think about when you're looking at that very first bullet as well. So this includes folks who have a potentially higher opportunity cost, like a tenured professor, let's say. He can still go down to go downtown, pay his $30 for an LLC, and work through this program while he is still primarily a professor at the university, right? And that works similarly for other research positions as well. Ultimately, we're going to leverage programmatically our ties with both the R&D communities as well as the operational communities as well. So this is really important when you're talking about commercialization and transitioning things from the lab and research space into the commercial space, where people outside of your research focus are going to be investing in what you're doing. The proposal structure is going to be the same between Sttr and SBIR, but there are some things to note. Certainly, all these details and much more are provided in the solicitation itself, and I would refer to any specific questions there. But long story short, you're going to have your basic information in Volume 1, Your technical volume, which is volume 2, is going to be a maximum of 25 slides, and when of that, a certain portion, 11 or 12, are required, and then the additionals are as applicable. You don't have to submit 25 slides if you don't want to, but if you only have to do the required slides, you can use the remaining slides to beef up the sections that you would like to, or you can leave them off if you think that's appropriate. Volume 3 is the cost volume. Those are system formatted inputs, so you're going to be typing in the numbers there as opposed to uploading your desired sheet. Volume 4 is a commercialization program. It's simply, you go to the website and you follow the directions. It's fairly straightforward. This website and the details there are in this solicitation as well. Volume 5 is a bit different. It's a supporting documentation. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to upload additional information here, whether that be your cost info, whether it be one of the two required or both the required documents, which is one is the teaming arrangement with your RI, with your research institution, and the other is your IP agreement. Both of those documents are required to be part of your supporting documentation. Certainly, resumes and other DoD funding agreements need to be in there as well. And then finally, in volume 6, you have your fraud, waste, and abuse training. That's important to know. All right. There are a few things that need to be in a proposal regardless, right? There are some things that we can judge and evaluate subjectively. We'll talk about the evaluation criteria here just momentarily. But there are some things that are policy driven, and we simply don't have decision trade space in making, right? First of all, if all eligible offers must be qualifying registered small businesses, and so propose a phase 1 effort with a qualifying research institution subcontractor. So you have some of the breakdowns there in terms of how much needs to be given to the small business, how much needs to go to the research institution, and then you have that trade space. So broken down and put it in a simple form, between 30 and 60% of the contract needs to go to one single qualifying research institution, and at least 40% needs to go to the small business, and then you have the rest for trade space. If you come in less than that percentage, right, we're simply not going to be able to evaluate you, right? It's a very simple calculation, and in order to be cognizant of the statutory requirements of the program, we have to obey these. So we don't have an opportunity to change that if it comes in and the math doesn't work out. This solicitation is for phase 1 only. Maximum contract terms of $50K in 3 months. If you come in with a $75K proposal, we won't be able to evaluate that, right? It won't meet the requirements of the program. Okay. Complete proposals must be submitted through the DSIP system. We can't take things over email or otherwise, right? If folks were to try to hand us a proposal, we won't be able to take those. So the DSIP system is the end-all be-all for us receiving proposals. Another important piece, and this is talked about at further length in the solicitation itself, but these activities must be research, development, test, and evaluation, right? We can't be buying your services, right? We can't be simply procuring a COTS or commercial off-the-shelf type of item, right? If you have a commercial item that you just simply want us to buy it from you, we will not be able to do that through these small business programs. Lastly, the fraud, waste, and abuse training is a simple requirement. We have to have that as part of your proposal. And again, if we're not able to hit those important points, we simply won't be able to evaluate your proposal when it comes in. All right, lastly, so what's next? Your phase 1 proposals are due on Thursday, the 18th of February at noon Eastern. Proposals received at 12:01 will not be able to be, will not be evaluated, will not be accepted. So please do not wait till the last minute. The window opens up, I believe, on the 14th of January. So there's no requirement for you to wait to the last day. And based on experiences in simple Murphy's Law, all things, if you procrastinate, things are going to have a much higher risk of not working out in your favor. So that's really important. And then, when you write your proposal, you have to talk to the evaluation criteria as we have there. Number one, potential for commercial application and benefits. Number two, appropriateness, relevance, and specificity of meeting a defense need. And then obviously the soundness, technical merit, and innovation of the proposed approach. So these are the things that we're going to be looking at and evaluating in your proposal, assuming that you met the basic eligibility requirements that we talked about just a little bit earlier. So with that, I'm going to hand it over finally to Ms. Zoe Walters, who's going to talk through the SBIR Phase 1.
Thanks, Jared. So we'll jump right in. We kind of talked through at the beginning the purpose of STTR versus SBIR versus the Phase 1 versus the direct to Phase 2. So the SBIR Phase 1 is a technical feasibility study. Same thing, 3 months, $50K to find the fit between your validated non-defense commercial product and then the potential defense marketplace for that product. Our proposal structure, it's very similar. So this is something new that I'd like to highlight. We've seen success in the STTR program having that maximum of 25 slides and no white paper. And so we're switching it up this time, and your required tech volume will be 11 slides that are required, 9 required as applicable, and then the rest will be elective. But that is your tech volume, is that 25 slide pitch deck. That's an attachment to the solicitation. So go in and you can see an example of that slide deck for Sbir, and I believe it also applies to STTR. You can also attach a 5-page white paper. It's optional, so no need to do that. But if you'd like to, you still can. Same thing, kind of as before. If it's longer than 5 pages, we only read the first 5 pages. The 25 slides, if it's longer than 25 slides, we're only going to read the first 25 slides. So do be mindful of that. Same thing, the cost inputted into the system, it should kind of guide you through, the things that you need to put in there. The commercialization report is the same thing. In the solicitation, you'll see the website to go to be able to generate that. And then our supporting documents, you can put additional cost info. So a budget sheet, however you want to show your cost info. It's your format, so you put that in the supporting documents. Same thing with the work plan. Key there is non-proprietary. So we absolutely have to have a non-proprietary work plan from you to put into the documents upon award. And so it's important that you don't have any of those markings on there and that it's, able to be distributed as such. Also, we'd love to see resumes and supporting documents so we know, your qualifications. And the DoD funding agreement certification is kind of the other required item. The last thing that I'll mention, and maybe this is something that we haven't hit as hard in the past, is the letters of support. And we'll talk about this, in a little bit, but in your supporting documentation, we ask that you combine, if you have multiple, into one single PDF, but you can put letters of support. So if you actually, have found an Air Force customer, or if you, been talking with somebody from a specific organization, either within the DoD, we've also seen letters of support from folks in industry to show your commercialization potential. Please put those in your supporting documents. We like to see them and read them. It gives us more information about you, your company, and then the specific solution that you're proposing. And then volume 6, as Jared said, is the fraud, waste, and abuse training. Got to have it. So please make sure that that's in there. So the non-negotiables, we talked a little bit about it, but you guys have to be qualifying registered small businesses. You have to have a DUNS number, cage code, all that stuff, the SAM registration. The solicitation is for phase 1s only, maximum of $50K for 3 months. So, as stated before, if you propose $500,000 in 12 months, we're not going to be able to award that to you. It's going to be outside of the scope of what this solicitation is for. So the other thing, complete proposals have to be submitted through DSIP. We cannot accept anything, via email, via any other, means. Even, if let's say you submit your application, we've had this in the past, and then something changes in your company, you try to submit, an update to us personally, we can't accept that. We can only evaluate what we get through DSIP. And so you have to ensure that every part of your proposal and the information that you have is submitted straight through DSIP. So you must be RDT&E. You must be proposing research and development, test, and evaluation, one of those two. If you go through the solicitation this round, especially in the phase 1 and the direct to phase 2 instructions, it really lines out pretty well what RDT&E is, what constitutes RDT&E. You can propose a commercial solution. That's what we want you to do. But in that commercial solution, you have to show where that research and development, test and evaluation would occur. Are you tailoring, your solution to meet a defense need? Are you doing test and evaluation with your commercial solution in a DoD environment? Make sure you specify that in your proposal so that we don't have to disqualify it. And the reason simply being that SBIR funds are RDT&E funds. And so, we can't use those and we have to use them for appropriate RDT&E efforts as dictated by Congress. And so we're pretty stringent about how we utilize those, and we've had to throw out proposals in the past that have great technologies, but they just aren't doing any research and development, test and evaluation. So be sure you go in and read that in the solicitation instructions, and really put part of that into your proposal so that it's pretty clear and well stated. The other non-negotiables, as we talked about before, the fraud, waste, and abuse training. And if if any of these things aren't in there, we can't evaluate your proposal. It's not personal. It's just something that we have to do to abide by the law. So what's next? Same timeline for all 3 solicitations we'll talk about today. So 18 February at noon Eastern is whenever your proposals are due. The application window opens on January 14th, just like Jared said. And I'm going to restate it because we have this problem every single round. Don't wait till the last day to submit your proposal. It's pre-released right now so that you can view it. So you have the whole next month to look at it, and then you have a whole month to propose to it. So I recommend getting it in as early as possible, just so that you're not sitting there, in the last day or the last week, even, trying to submit your proposal while the website crashes, because everyone is trying to submit their proposal. So do yourself a favor, save some of those gray hairs that you'll grow over that time period and submit it as early as possible. Again, I'm going to kind of highlight this. It's a 25 slide tech volume this round for phase 1. So ensure you go in, look at the example, read the solicitation, and propose, via that method. So our evaluation criteria has changed just a little bit since from the last round, and you guys can read it up here. This is pulled directly out of the solicitation. So as always, go back to the solicitation. That is, that's the Bible basically of Sbir. So go and look at that, read it from there. But we're still evaluating, based on the same kind of 3 general criteria, and that's commercialization potential, defense need, and technical merit. So I'll throw it over to Jimmy to go through the direct to phase 2.
Thanks, Zoe. Appreciate that. And I'll just be adding on to what's already been talked about in the Sttr and the SBIR phase 1. Right here, we're talking about going to a direct to phase 2. So really, we're looking at trial and validation. These are bigger bets. It's a 15-month period of performance and up to $750,000. And this extra money, this bigger bet, is now to conduct kind of this further, like what Zoe was mentioning, R&D, but also T&E for if you've already found your Air Force customer and you're ready to now take this, build out your commercial solution to meet that Air Force customers' needs. That's what this is going to be for, the $750,000. Now, the big difference too between the regular phase 2 versus this direct to phase 2 is that you're skipping the phase 1 step. So in this, you're going to need to show how you were able to how you were able to find that Air Force customer and validate that need. And that's going to be through your customer memorandum. So if we go to the next slide here, proposal, we've already talked about this. I'm going to basically show what's different then. If you want to go to a direct to phase 2, this is what's going to be different. Some things are going to be the same. Volume 1, you're going to be answering all the same things on there. There is going to be there's questions in there though now that are also going to touch on some foreign ownership and foreign disclosure. I'll talk about that here in a second. But volume 2, you'll see it's similar but different in that on here you actually need to do both slides and the white paper. Now with the slides though, 11 are required and only 4 required as applicable. So the rest are all pretty much how you want to use them to show your solution. The white paper is a little bit smaller, 15 pages, but it is required on here. Some of the same things though, you're going to have the commercialization report that's going to be, you're going to walk through the system and I'll show you that. But the big differentiator now, once you get to phase 2, is the signed MOU. And one of the things I'm going to foot stomp on that is it's a new template since this last round, but it's going to be mandatory now to utilize that. And that's really because it's capturing a bunch of different information than it had in the past. So it's super important to really get that down. And really when you're, for the direct to phase 2, that's one of the biggest things we look at because it touches really on the commercialization side piece, but also the defense needs. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. One of the other key differences too, once you get to phase 2, is the option now for matching funds as well. So in terms of you can get both government or you can have private investment funds. Now, one thing I want to say is it's not required to have it. So it doesn't. The lack of it does not make your proposal any less strong. It just helps it can, as you see as a note here, it can serve as evidence though of commercial potential. So, but the great thing is if you do get a government match on there, it just adds extra dollars to your phase 2. So you have extra funds to work with on that. Letters of support, like Zoe said, really important. And in fact, your signed MOU will actually be in the letter of support section when you do that. And can we go to the next slide, please? So I want to just drill down just a little bit more on this customer memorandum. What is it for? Well, it's really going to capture that interest of your Air Force customer. So if you work with someone right now in the Air Force, going through the memorandum, that's where you guys are going to codify what it is you're going to be doing with them. And you're going to come out on there and put like what it is exactly you will be building out for them. You'll have a schedule of milestones, basically touching on what Zoe mentioned and Jared in terms of R&D efforts in there. So you're going to say, hey, here's our commercial solution, and here's what is going to, here's how we're going to adapt that to work for you now on the Air Force side. Big thing is also needs to be signed. So it has, you know, we want it really from two users. One is the end user and the customer. So sometimes they can be the same, but almost, I would say 95% of the time they are different. And so that's a big thing. So a sign, if it's not signed, we can't review it. So that's one of the big things. If you don't have it, we can't review it. So really, I can't foot stomp enough how important the customer memorandum is. One of the other things too is it has to be an Air Force user. So, but we will accept memorandum from other defense users, but they have to be in addition to. So you at least have to have one of them that addresses who an actual Air Force end user is. Next slide. So I kind of made this a little bit bigger just to kind of show you what our evaluation criteria is on it. A lot of it's the same, and I kind of highlighted a few things on there. Commercialization, really the main things we're going to be taking a look at when we break out the commercialization portion is what is your record of commercializing Sbir. We also put in other research too. It can be what other types of R&D have you done in the past that shows you have that record of commercialization. And I want to show for folks there, you don't have to have high revenue numbers or whatever to show commercialization. As you can see here, things like your pre-sales, pilots, downloads, active users, all those things can show some type of traction, right, for commercialization. So important to know that, really stress what it is that you guys have done out there. If you think, hey, we're pre-revenue, that's fine. I mean, just show then what you've done to attract users. Have you done some unpaid pilots? Have you done paid pilots? Have you just done beta tests? Let us know what those numbers look like, right? Because we want, again, as Jared mentioned earlier, we're trying to buy down risk, right? So we want to see that this has been fielded, this has been done, some work on your side as well. The idea of follow-on commitments, on there can show commercial potential. Again, that could be investment side, on there that we've mentioned before. And then the transition strategy, we really want to see that's sound. That'll also be on the defense needs side. We're talking really about the big things in terms of this MOU is really complete and compelling. So when you're working with your Air Force customer on that, you really need to drill down what it is their need is, and they need to state that, and you'll see it in the template that's in the solicitation. So you want to show what that need is of the customer, but then also link in what your company is going to bring to that to address that need. So that's what the folks will be looking at when they review that, is that match between what it is their need is and what it is that you're bringing. And then the other portion to that is your transition. So I can't stress enough, don't use the boilerplate. I mean, that's in that's in the template. What you need to do is really take that transition, work with your government customer to figure out what does phase 3 look like? What does transitioning from phase 2 to actually getting a contract, what does that mean? And that means identifying, what type of vehicle that's going to be due, how that technology is going to be fed in. Again, if we just see boilerplate, that isn't really that compelling. And then finally, the technical merit. So that's, again, it's been foot stomped the last, no difference really between the phase 1 and STTR on that one. Next slide, please. And I'll just go quickly back to matching funds. A couple of things I'll say on that. So on the government funds, if you get it, that's great, because that adds to your to the funds that you have available. But they need to be received within 30 days of closing. So that'll be important if you do have that government customer that wants to chip in dollars. Make sure that they're working with us to get that in there. Private investment, you have a little bit longer, 90 days to have that from award, actually. So it's a good amount of time on that to be able to get the proof that you have them in there. Again, I want to foot stomp that the fact of investment by venture, private equity, any of those type of things is not going to be used as a award criteria. So, like I mentioned earlier, the absence of that does not mean that you are not going to be considered. The only thing it can be looked at is a piece of commercialization. So we can look at that as, hey, there's something that, and as it shows on the ballot, cost share or match is evidence of commercial potential. So next slide. Actually, go back one more. I'm going to just talk one last thing on to one of the great things also about either the direct to phase 2 or phase 2, just phase 2 in general. And if you were there at the Accelerate AFWERX Day, Steve talked about, which is our phase 2 pluses that you'll see more of here soon. StratFi was one last year. But the nice thing is when you become a part of the phase 2 family on there, you will have access to these additional vehicles for accelerated capital. So it's just one of these things there that is a benefit to being on the phase 2. So you'll hear more about that here as Steve mentioned That's hopefully going to be hitting the streets soon. But we want to let you know, at least that's one of the benefits now of coming into our program, whether it's starting at the STTR side or the phase 1 side. The idea is hopefully you guys get to the phase 2 and that unlocks a bunch of other stuff. And then again, with that, around matching funds, around this transition, everything's around transition. Jared mentioned that at the very beginning. Can't stress that enough. So even when you're in the phase 2, what we want to get you to is to a contract. So next slide now. And as I touched on before, there's going to be a portion in that section 1 that's now going to be talking about foreign disclosure. So if you hit on one of those, I think it's going to ask you to submit this addendum. And this is just brand new for this 20.1 or 21.1. So just want to just quickly just touch on it. Here's going to be basically saying is your company employing any foreign nationals? Are you receiving any investment dollars from overseas or from foreign-owned entities in the U.S.? So you can kind of read that list. It's in the solicitation itself. If you say yes to that, you just need and it's not disqualifying you for doing it. It's just one of the things that we need to capture on that. So again, that'll be there for this round. There'll probably be questions around it, which we'll address probably in the next AMA as well. Next slide, please. And back to Zoe.
Thanks. So I wanted to go through a couple of ways that you can identify a defense need. We've seen a couple of questions so far about the mission areas and if they'll be updated for this round. And so there's those along with a few others. You'll also find some info in the solicitation, but thought we could kind of briefly talk through it. So the answer is yes. The mission areas are updated on the AFWERX website currently, the focus areas. So these are basically, think of Air Force markets of interest. We have we have 3 large open topics, right? The Sbir phase 1, Sbir direct phase 2, and the STTR phase 1. So we're pulling in technologies, for the whole force. And so that said, the way that we kind of decide how we can utilize our money best, and how you all know, which program offices, groups, organizations need specific technologies is through these focus areas. And so I do encourage you all to go. There is a Word document on the website. There's also kind of like a live version of that. And then there should be a way for you to be able to reach out to that POC who wrote that to maybe have further conversations. That said, once, if you've been selected and awarded, we will go and we'll ask you, hey, would you like to be connected to any of these focus area POCs? And that's your opportunity to kind of jumpstart the technical feasibility portion of your phase 1. So I guess one more thing to mention about that, if you do find one of these focus areas or a mission area elsewhere listed that you think you could propose towards that your technology could solve that problem, then we ask that you name that on your proposal, just so that we have a better understanding of the kind of area that you're looking to apply your solution. So a couple of those other places are Air Force Tech Connect, the small business specialists. So those sit at various bases. They can help you to connect your solution to different folks within their organizations. The Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, so PTACs, also across the country. AFWERX challenges are a good way to see, if your solution solves one of our current needs. And the same thing with the Defense Innovation Marketplace. So, like we said, we're recording these. These are also all listed in the solicitation, so don't worry about writing down the website info right now. But you'll be able to find it, and I do encourage you to click around on there and kind of see, which ones fit you. So kind of one of our last slides, you'll find this on the AFWERX website. As we mentioned before, if you go to the AFVentures tab and then down to either Sbir or Sttr, there's a how to apply section that kind of takes you through it in maybe more layman's terms than you will find elsewhere. But you can review the full eligibility guidelines in that here box. So I do encourage you, if this is your first time especially, to go and look at the eligibility lines and make sure that your company qualifies for Sbir Sttr. And the kind of big ones are be at least 50% US owned, and you have to have less than 500 employees. You also have to have a registered, in SAM, have to have a cage code and a DUNS number. Those are kind of the big ones. So with that, like I said, the Q&A, this video will be posted up on the AFWERX website after the call. You'll be able to find that under the Sbir tab, probably the Sttr tab as well. And our next AMA will be on January 8th at 12 Eastern again. So we hope you enjoy your Christmas break, and we'll see you guys back in January. And this time, I'll turn it over to the team. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can in the 11 minutes that we have remaining. So Jared, I saw some questions about eligibility things. So could you kind of take us through, is dual citizenship considered foreign national? Oh, he said 1 second.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
All right, perfect. So no, great questions, and I apologize I wasn't able to unmute there for a second. But so I think one of the things that we want to talk through is that I see in the chat, and we're going to try to hit some of the most common up front, and then make sure to kind of drill down as much as possible here. So first of all, we talk about foreign nationals and the requirements there. Permanent residents are okay, right? That's kind of the baseline for being a principal investigator and participating in that regard, right? If you are not a permanent resident or do not have, or like a student visa, for instance, would not be considered a permanent resident and would need to be declared, right? And so there's nuance to that in terms of, for student visas, we have to make sure that the work that's being completed and being proposed falls within the limits of their student visa. They're not working the excessive hours, all that kind of thing. So there's due diligence that we have to go through on our end to make sure that that we're all kind of obeying the regulations and laws that we have to. One thing I do want to kind of walk through just briefly is the structure of the program, right? So we talk about phase 1, we talk about phase 2 and phase 3. I think a lot of you are familiar with the supplemental programs, TACFI and STRACFI, that we have really highlighted in the Accelerate event here just last week. And so I want to kind of walk through that really briefly, right? So this phase 1 effort that you see with SBIR and Sttr is a 3-month 50K effort, right? The work that's being proposed has to be R&D. But we're talking about when you propose, you're proposing certainly for that period of performance, right? But you're alluding to what you're going to develop through the process, right? And so you're talking about the the base of technology, whether that's IP in the lab, whether that's a commercial product or what have you, the development that's going to have to happen, the research and development that's going to have to happen to make that baseline technology, whatever form it's in now, into a usable tech and valuable tech for the defense marketplace, right? And so you can certainly start with the COTS product, but what you can't be attributing to the program is us simply buying that COTS. We have to be doing some kind of research and development to the lab IP, to the COTS product, or what have you. So in phase 1 specifically, what we're looking for is feasibility, right? We're trying to figure out if what you are providing, right, what you proposed is a feasible project for transition later on in the program, right? And so a lot of that has to do with finding those defense customers, right, through the program and the tools that we provide as part of that phase 1 program, and then taking those early adopters that you find and codify their demand signal into phase 2, where you're developing a prototype for them in their particular application. So at that point, you're taking your technology baseline, you're taking your prototype and applying it to their particular application themselves, right? And what the idea there is that you can show them and continue to demonstrate the program, the value of your solution or product, such that they are looking to back you into those STRATFI and TACFI programs. So all of the things that we talked about today are kind of feed into that TACFI and STRATFI and will be eligible for those awards later on. What we're talking about now is kind of the starting point. So the directed phase 2 is a really high bar, right? Not everyone's going to have defense customers on speed dial who are willing to fill out an MOU, right? And to back you into that directed phase 2. That's really what phase 1 is for, right? And so for those who are interested and maybe aren't to that point, phase 1 is probably where we need to start, right? And to be frank, even the folks who think and who have those Air Force customers lined up, phase 1 provides a lot of value in terms of being able to have more substantial conversations and be able to put together a more cohesive and a more robust phase 2 proposal later on. So phase 3, the other thing that we kind of talked about, phase 3 is simply an opportunity for, again, any federal agency to provide or to procure or develop your things following, using that sole source justification, right? Phase 3s are completely user funded. They can be done at any time. There's no cap for duration or any of that kind of thing. And for these programs, they're one of the primary definitions of what transition is. So that's kind of one of the end goals here, is that you can take advantage of those program improvements. But back to kind of what we're talking about today, specifically the phase 1 and the direct to phase 2. Those phase 1s, again, short duration, relatively small dollar value. We're not going to be developing prototypes during this phase 1. We're looking for the applications in which to develop those prototypes for phase 2. Okay. But yeah, we'll continue to kind of shoot and try to address each of these questions up front. So Zoe and Jimmy, if you guys see things you want to address, feel free to jump in and talk through it.
Yeah, one of the things I saw in here is talking about being on a phase 2 already and applying for direct to phase 2. The answer is yes. You can, and in addition to that, you can submit to multiple direct to phase 2s as well. The only thing you got to remember on that is it needs to be for different types of work. So it cannot be doing the same type of work on that. But if you're proposing different efforts with different customers, that's completely fine. So you're not held down because of that. So.
Yeah, and I think just kind of to piggyback off that, if you apply to direct to phase 2, we also encourage you to apply to the phase 1, just due to the competitive nature of the program. There's no problem with applying for one or multiple phase 1s, as well as kind of cross programs, as long as whenever if you're awarded, we're only paying you to do a set of work one time. And so keep that in mind. But we encourage you to not just apply direct to phase 2 if you want, but to also apply to the phase 1.
Yeah, that's perfect. One thing I do want to highlight too is that there are other Air Force topics out there, right? So there are other entries when you go into DSIP. One of the ways you can know that you're looking at the open topic, one is the title and the description, but you can also note the X in front of the number, right? So 21.1 or 21.A, there are X's in front of those that denote our CSO solicitation document as opposed to a BAA. It's largely transparent to you all, but it's one way to know that you're looking at the right thing.
In terms of people asking about the new MOU template, the great thing is it's out on the street, so you'll be able to see it right now. It's with the solicitation, so quicker you get that and you're able to talk to your Air Force customer, the better. So, and it walks you through. It's a good template. It'll show it in red, like all the required areas you need to put the information in. So pretty self-explanatory. But all those attachments are located within the solicitation. So when that's first released, it's out there at the exact same time. So there should be no reason to be using any old templates. It's all there for you.
Yeah, one thing with the joint organizations is that we do require the MOUs come from and have identified Air Force TPOCs, right, technical points of contact. So these are Air Force funds that we're using, right, to fund these programs through this open topic. And so it's important for us to make sure that we're abiding by the appropriation guidelines in terms of paying for Air Force things, right? And so one way that we do that is requiring, those Air Force TPOCs to be identified in those MOUs. So one thing to keep in mind is that certainly the Air Force has Air Force people, right? That's obvious, but it's joint organizations do too. Other federal agencies do too, right? NASA has Air Force people working for them, right? FAA and so on. So there's other opportunities, and I say Air Force, I'm talking Department of the Air Force here, so to include Space Force. But it's important for those folks to be identified, again. So you can have joint organizations leveraging this process, but we do need to identify those Air Force, Department of the Air Force POCs. Also, this is not the last time you'll talk to us, right? So I know there's a few comments in the chat there talking about, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with someone, and so again, we have a number of AMAs coming up, so please keep an eye on the AFWERX website for those. And also, we have there's a number of help desks associated with the DSIP system, with Air Force Ventures, and with the SBIR and STTR that you can reference as well. Those emails, those help desk emails, are at the very front of the solicitation documents. So please do reference those emails and those contacts. I know obviously there's always way more questions that we can get to immediately, but one thing that we can do is we're going to take down the questions that we haven't touched on just yet, and make a list for this next AMA to make sure we address those. Please do, again, take advantage of the help desk and the folks manning those. Even though over the holidays, I'm sure that there's going to be not as many folks looking at those as folks spend time with their families. But I want to make sure that we highlight and tell you thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to speaking with you not only at their future AMAs, but ultimately seeing your proposals come through. So thanks so much for joining, and we look forward to working with each and every one of you.